I grew up in a Christian home. I went to a Christian school. My parents were actively serving in church as leaders. And my dad, who at that time was running a logistics company and was very busy, prioritized family Bible study and prayer. My mom headed the intercession ministry at church and was also serving in other ways. She was a Sunday school teacher, counseling women, young adults, teens. She served faithfully alongside my dad, who was also a church elder. They made sure that us kids, we saw how serving the Lord wasn't just a Sunday affair. It was an any day of the week type thing. Our home, as we siblings, love to joke, was like the Grand Central Station. People were in and out of our home all the time, having meals with us, and sometimes even staying overnight for days, weeks, months. Living in that environment led me to believe that I truly was a born-again Christian. Also, my Christian education further reinforced this conviction I had about my faith. But in reality, for the most part, a lot of what I said and did, they were just modeled after how I saw my parents live. I professed a largely borrowed faith. In my third year of high school, I remember being invited to join a Bible study for young people, and it became a weekly habit, and it was great for me because around that time I was going through, a heartbreak, my first heartbreak, and when you're that young, you really do feel like, my gosh, it's the end of the world. This is so painful, and I was grateful to have a strong, close-knit Christian community in that group. It was so refreshing for my heart, for my soul, and this group was used by the Lord to draw me unto Himself and His Word. Eventually, that Bible study became an all-ladies group when I started university. And again, I found that it was the exact thing that I needed, the support that I needed at that point in my life. Because it was the first time in my 17 years on earth that I saw the need to share the gospel to the lost. I couldn't grasp how there really were people who did not believe in God or anything else, or anything for that matter. I was so shocked. And so this ladies, life group, they encouraged me to join the Christian college ministry, which, was led by Pastor Rafi, by Rafi then and his friend. And so I joined. I have very fond memories of serving the Lord as a college student, sharing the gospel with unbelieving friends, the joy of seeing them come to Christ, volunteering in kids' church and the worship ministry, the ladies' ministry for abused women and children. It truly was a fruitful time and season. And then I graduated, trimestral school, so I was done in 3 years. And in all my want and hurry to graduate, nearing the end of my college life, I thought, shucks, maybe, I shouldn't have rushed it. Maybe I should have spread out my subjects more, and then I'd have one more year as a student, because I honestly hadn't figured out yet what I wanted to do in life. I became a reading teacher at a local school. I worked as a profiler for a security firm. I got into publishing and writing, which, then led me to want to go back to school. I studied fashion merchandising, and eventually, I found a job as an associate brand manager. So I went from one job to the next, hoping to find myself, but I never did. After graduation, I also began to think about my future husband. You're done with school, so on to the next season. And after that high school breakup, I took a break from relationships. It was such a horrible experience, almost traumatic actually, because I lost a good friend, when that relationship ended. So I remember not wanting to feel that sense of loss again. So I told myself, I promised God, I'm going to stay single until, Lord, you bring me to the one, God's perfect choice. So in my head and heart, I assumed that this guy, whoever he was, would be waiting for me a couple of years after college. Because, I had planned and plotted out my life. By 27, I would be married to a handsome Christian man. By 29, I would be a first-time mom. And by the time I hit my mid-30s, I would be a successful career woman with a wonderful marriage and children growing up in a Christian home. All so simple, and easy to follow, right? Right, Lord? I had my own life plan, which became my idol. And when I saw that the timeline I so carefully plotted out and thought about was not even close to my reality, it triggered something in my heart. Instead of running to God with my feelings of dissatisfaction, of disillusionment, I ran away. In my heart, I ran away. Oh, I still went to church. I still served, in different ministries, but my heart was far from God. I had done Christianity for so long that I knew exactly what to say, exactly what to do, how to act. What started out as a little seed of distrust towards God, it eventually became all out, full-blown sin. Not long after feeling like, perhaps God doesn't really know what He's doing after all. How prideful. I met a man, and he was the wrong kind of man in every way. Thinking of the parable of the prodigal son, I started out as the self-righteous, dutiful older brother, outwardly doing what a Christian ought to do, outwardly living a way that a Christian should, but completely missing out on the joy of being God the Father's child. I was so close to God in proximity, but not in heart, not where it truly mattered. In all my self-righteousness and striving and working to earn God's favor, in the fulfillment of my, plan and timeline, right, I eventually morphed into the younger brother, the prodigal son himself. My inward rebellion became an outwardly expressed one. I tried to hide it as best as I could from church people, friends, and family, especially my parents. I began to live a double life, and I did this for years, half a decade. I stayed in that relationship for as long as I could, hoping to find myself, but I never did. One evening, the weight of my sin had become so overwhelming. I could no longer continue on sinning. I even felt, in a very physical sense, the heaviness of all that I had done. And for the first time, I was afraid of what that meant for me, eternally speaking. I tried to open my Bible, reading the familiar verses that I was so used to hearing growing up. Psalm 23, Jeremiah 29:11. But none of these verses brought any sense or semblance of hope. I prayed for mercy, I prayed for grace, but I never, I felt neither. It was just this heaviness, like I was wearing a wetsuit of sin that was so part of me already. For the first time in my life, I had seen for myself how truly sinful I was. I was a wretch and I needed to be saved. I was at the end of myself, nothing righteous or holy to show God. I had nothing of value or worth to offer the Lord. I had no good works to point to. My black heart of sin was all that I had to give. And who would ever want that? Jesus, the sacrificial lamb who was slain in my place. The holy, worthy one who died on the cross to pay the price of sin, of my sin. His death, his blood purchased my salvation from eternal damnation. His redemption had never felt more real than in that moment. Confronted with my own sin, my seemingly endless capacity to sin, and then knowing in my heart Jesus' redemptive love, His saving grace, His tender mercy, all the weight of my double life just dissipated. Jesus rescued me out of the mire and muck of my sin, and the cost of the cross arrested my rebellious heart.